It surely took me some time to pick up my jaw from the floor after experiencing everything that happened in the latest episode of X-Men 97 Season 2. At this point, it feels like the animated series has been outdoing itself and setting up the bar high with every passing development. It has not just been carrying the legacy of the OG 90 series, and quite brilliantly if I might add, but also leaving its own mark by making the bold choice of deviating from famous comic storylines. I mean, nobody saw Magneto's death coming, right? And the comic book arc certainly did not include Magneto going out this way, with the newly risen Apocalypse blowing his head off right in front of a helpless Charles Xavier. I do agree that 2 years back when X-Men 97 debuted with its first season, Marvel really outdid Gambit's tragic demise from the comics as the Raging Cajun gloriously sacrificed himself to give us what could be one of the most impactful on-screen deaths in the Marvel Universe. Don't get me wrong, I too shed my tears for Gambit back in the day, but nothing comes close to watching an X-Men legend being killed off like that. But as I see it, Magneto's death shifted something in Xavier, and by the looks of it, this is going to completely change the trajectory of X-Men 97. To add on to that, we have that crazy post-credit scene with Wolverine meeting up with Captain America and Black Widow in Paris. This pretty much demands us to discuss, dissect, and theorize whatever is coming for the X-Men next. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss what might happen in the 5th episode of X-Men 97, Season 2. Comic book characters are never truly dead. Well, the second season of X-Men 97 is almost halfway into the installment, and things have not been looking up for our favorite mutants. For starters, the team was already split apart in 3 different timelines. And while the previous episode dealt with Forge, Storm, Wolverine, Morph, Jean Grey, and Cyclops were sent to the year 3960 to help Nathan come into his powers and understand his role as the Messiah. This episode follows Beast, Nightcrawler, Rogue, Xavier, Magneto, and Bishop stuck in ancient Egypt around 3000 BC, where Apocalypse has still not yet become a megavillain and is still going by his birth name, Ensaba-Nur. We see Magneto leading the charge for the most part as he tries his best to convince Ensaba-Nur about the existence of a world that treats mutants fairly. For a change, Magneto tried to be hopeful about having an opportunity to alter history, but sadly the temple that they were all trying to get to in order to fight Rama-Tut turned out to be Apocalypse's ship from the future. It does not take long for Ensaba-Nur to catch up on the scriptures engraved inside the ship and find out about his destiny as the most powerful and virtually unkillable mutant across every goddamn timeline. That absolutely pissed off Nur as he realized that the X-Men were actually trying to stop him from evolving into Apocalypse, and so he powers up to become what he has always been destined to be. The X-Men do try to stop him and fail horribly as Nur uses what I think is the Power Stone from the Celestial that was buried deep inside the pyramid to become Apocalypse. This helps Magneto come to the realization of how badly he had misread the whole fiasco, and so he ended up sending all the other X-Men back into the 90s while he stayed back to face the newly transformed Apocalypse alone. It was only Charles Xavier who refused to let go of his old friend and managed to stay by his side. However, in the final battle, Apocalypse uses his powerful arm cannon blast to blow off Magneto's head after the Master of Magneticism burnt himself out to seal off the black hole unleashed by the villain to destroy every living being in Egypt. Initially, we all did believe that sealing the black hole would kill Magneto, and that truly would have been easier on the eye than seeing Apocalypse pick him up by the head and obliterate him as Xavier watched. This was jaw-droppingly stunning, especially because X-Men 97 has already given us 2 different fake-out demises for Magneto, but from the looks of it, this one seems to have sealed the deal for him. Magneto's death will pretty much rewrite the entire hierarchy of the X-Men, especially because this season has spent a huge chunk of time rebuilding the camaraderie that Magnus and Charles once started. Having said that, everyone and their uncle understand that character deaths are never permanent in comic book arcs, even after they are adapted into TV or the bigger screen. Plus, X-Men 97 is not considered to be a part of MCU canon, and that is probably why the animated series does not shy away from killing off anyone. Superheroes are often resurrected with multiverse shenanigans or time travel, and Magneto is just too iconic of a character to be gone for good. So if I were you, I would be more shocked if Eric Magnus Lencher does not return to reprise his role. It seems like this season is adapting the Age of Apocalypse comic book storyline from 1995, where it was actually Magneto who kills Apocalypse, instead of being the other way around. Moreover, the Master of Magneticism has always been an Omega-level anti-hero, and he also dies all the time throughout the Marvel lore. But like I said, this mega event is edging towards the Age of Apocalypse storyline, where Apocalypse often resurrects dead mutants as his horseman, and since he was the one to kill Magneto, it is possible that the villain preserved Magneto's consciousness just to rebuild him again as the ultimate weapon when the time comes. We know that Apocalypse uses his celestial regeneration pods to reverse mutant deaths to create his elite vanguard, and he will definitely need a new team of horsemen in the 90s timeline, so it is possible that the villain will bring back Magneto, who would be a great candidate for war. We did see it happen to both of them in Fox's X-Men Apocalypse movie, and in X-Men Evolution, and because we have been going really off the book, maybe the series will end up morphing two storylines together. If not as a horseman, Magneto can also resurrect as a timeline dilemma, and because time travel has been such a huge narrative device this season, I doubt Bishop or Forge would allow such a disruption, which means we might see another version of him alive somewhere across time. Even if this is all a big speculation, I really hope we get to see Magneto as a horseman. I mean, can you imagine how mind-shatteringly cool that would be? Gambit is definitely coming back. Apocalypse commits really heinous and evil deeds throughout his lore, but the Horsemen are the worst thing he does as he turns powerful mutants into puppets by enhancing their powers and brainwashing them. Now, we have met a few of Apocalypse's Horsemen in Season 2, but nothing will come close to the Horsemen that the show has been teasing since the previous season. As you know, Gambit's death truly broke our hearts in Season 1 as he sacrificed his life to kill the Wild Sentinel that turned a gala into a mutant massacre. But the debut season also ended with a post-credits scene of Apocalypse staring at one of Gambit's playing cards while standing amidst the ruins of Genosha. This scene was not added without a reason, as the villain specifically loomed over Gambit's death, which means you can expect to see him resurrect as one of Apocalypse's horsemen in the upcoming episodes. Moreover, within the comics, Gambit had actually served as the Horseman of Death in the Uncanny X-Men Blood of Apocalypse storyline. And to add on to that theory, in this episode we see Rogue having a conversation with Ensaba Noor, that too about Gambit's sacrifice and the love she has for him. This all hints towards Apocalypse bringing him back as the Horseman of Death in the upcoming episode. Even with glowing red eyes, Gambit will be recognized by Rogue, which will inevitably culminate in a dramatic confrontation between them. This could either end with Rogue trying to save Gambit by helping him snap out of Apocalypse's influence, or by killing him when she is left with no other choice. Given how deeply in love Rogue is, I could also see her sacrificing herself or her powers to bring Gambit over from the dark side. Either way, Gambit's return is confirmed by any means. The Rise of Onslaught. As you know, in the epic Age of Apocalypse event, Apocalypse rather famously meets his end when Magneto tears him in half. So you understand why seeing the impossibly powerful villain reverse the dynamic to kill the Master of Magnetism was something of a shock for the ones who read the comics. More than that, the sight of Charles Xavier crawling towards a dying Magneto through the sand and then witnessing his death was heartbreaking. The distraught that reflects on Xavier after losing his former best friend almost carries the tragedy of a lover. But you can also feel Xavier's rage as he looks at Apocalypse with tears in his eyes and claims how the villain would always remain a monster and could never become a god. I think we all saw the great irony of Magneto dying while essentially fighting a distilled personification of his own belief in mutant supremacy, which makes all of this both poetic and futile. Having said that, the main emotional driver has been the ideological clash between Xavier and Magneto. But seeing Xavier's shock and rage when Apocalypse kills Magneto, it is safe to assume that the Professor's grief could lead him to extreme measures. The recent episode of X-Men 97 ends with Xavier alone, holding Magneto's helmet and seething at the carnage left behind by Apocalypse. So I won't be surprised if I see the Professor wear Magneto's helmet when his psyche is tested and he finally reaches a breaking point after losing his best friend and facing Apocalypse's terror in the 90s. I do not know if you have noticed, but the trauma of watching Magneto die has already caused an immediate dark shift in Xavier. Well, to add on to that, in the comics, After Wolverine's adamantium is ripped from his bones in the Fatal Attractions arc, Xavier goes on to use his considerable psychic power to enter Magneto's mind and fully shut him down before he could unleash his powers. But this resulted in Xavier unknowingly absorbing the darkest parts of Magneto's psyche, including his rage, hatred, grief, and resentment. Those emotions apparently ended up taking root within Xavier's subconscious, where they merged with his own suppressed anger and frustrations. Just like that, the combined psychic darkness evolved into a separate personality known as Onslaught. Initially, this nigh omnipotent psychic villain only existed inside the professor's mind, and took a toll on him by secretly influencing his thoughts and actions. But over time, the entity became powerful enough to break free and take a separate physical form. I think we will see the rise of Onslaught as a last resort for Xavier to take down Apocalypse. This story has already been cooking since Season 1 now, and because Onslaught first took control over Xavier's body before becoming independent in the comics, this season might give us quite the climactic showdown between both villains as the Professor faces off Apocalypse. I guess if Xavier and Magneto couldn't defeat Apocalypse on their own, maybe the answer is for them to become something far more powerful together, even if the consequences are devastatingly disastrous. We are definitely getting Wolverine's real Weapon X origin story, and probably seeing him get that adamantium back. Well, the next episode is titled as Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs, and given the surprising post-credits scene from the latest episode of X-Men 97, I am guessing most of you have understood what's coming. Wolverine has been fighting with bone claws this season after his adamantium skeleton was ripped out of his bones by Magneto in the previous season. Of course, that has severely affected his abilities, and that is why in the post-credits scene we see Wolverine meet up with Captain America and Black Widow in Paris, where the two share brief reminiscences, recalling how they worked together 50 years ago. Following this, Cap hands over a dossier marked as Weapon X, which makes it pretty clear that we are about to learn some thrilling secrets from Wolverine's past, and I think they will be lifted straight from the comics. It seems like Wolverine has plans to return back to the organization that originally imbued his body with the indestructible metal. For those who have not read it, in the comics, Weapon X is a secret Canadian government experimental program aimed at creating the ultimate living weapon. It is part of the larger Weapon Plus program, where X is the Roman numeral for 10, and that means Logan was not exactly the first mutant to be experimented on. In other words, Wolverine was the 10th generation experimental super soldier created by the so-called Weapon Plus program, and appropriately enough, Steve Rogers was Weapon. Whether Captain America and Black Widow will join Wolverine on this mission remains to be seen, especially because the presence of these two Avengers is obviously a nod to Uncanny X-Men, issue 268, including the costumes. Yes, I am hinting towards Black Widow's campy gray suit. Anyway, Weapon Plus was the brainchild of the famous Grant Morrison, and his era already had a massive influence on X-Men 97's Genosha arc. Moreover, the rumors are that Marvel's first X-Men 97 trailer, which debuted at Comic-Con Revolution Ontario and was never released online, featured a scene in which Logan led a task force, with DVDs representing different Weapon Plus test subjects. So we are clearly about to learn the full Wolverine origin story in the next episode. As you know, X-Men 97's Wolverine is currently depowered after the adamantium was stripped from his bones. That would surely be a smart move on Marvel's part, as it would turn this around from a random side mission to a logical part of the story. We might meet Fantomex. I mean, I cannot simply overlook the French connection in the post-credits scene, right? Now, I do not know if you picked up on it, but the Weapon Plus mystery is closely connected to one specific character in the comics, and that is Fantomex. Created as Weapon 13, Fantomex is an elite yet delightfully whimsical super soldier and one of Marvel's deadliest assassins, but he is far from a typical operative. He shares a strange psychic bond with Ava, which is a living spacecraft that is essentially an extension of his own nervous system, and gives him abilities unlike any other mutant. He is also famous for his flamboyant personality and his deliberately over-the-top French accent, which makes Wolverine's upcoming trip to Paris with Captain America and Black Widow feel more than just a coincidence. If X-Men 97 is indeed building toward Fantomex's introduction, the series could be adapting some of Grant Morrison's most imaginative and mind-bending X-Men stories. His arrival would also open the door to another major Weapon Plus facility called The World. This secret facility exists outside the normal flow of time and allows decades of development to pass in what feels like only moments in the outside world. Hidden away in the English countryside, the world has become one of the most fascinating locations in modern X-Men lore. Moreover, I think bringing in both Fantomex and the world into X-Men 97 would not only expand the Weapon Plus lore, but also introduce us to one of the franchise's most creative and ambitious storylines. This could also mean for a Winter Soldier setup. As strange and shocking as it may sound, one of the biggest surprises to come out of Comic-Con Revolution Ontario was the reveal of several names printed on the Weapon Plus data discs, including a reference to the Winter Soldier. From the looks of it, in the X-Men 97 timeline, the Weapon Plus program was not limited to the United States, but also operated on the other side of the Iron Curtain. It could also explain why the trailers feature the Russian mutant Omega Red, who may have been created through a Soviet version of the same Super Soldier program. Having said that, the Winter Soldier reference is especially important here because of his long and complicated history with Wolverine in the comics. While under Hydra's control, Bucky Barnes was manipulated into carrying out missions that repeatedly crossed paths with Logan. He was even responsible for killing one of Wolverine's lovers, and his actions ultimately led to Wolverine's son, Daken, being taken away and used as part of Romulus's larger plans. Those events left a lasting impact on Logan, and made the Winter Soldier one of the darker chapters in his past. What's particularly exciting is that X-Men 97 hasn't revealed what version of the Winter Soldier exists in this timeline. Unlike the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where Bucky eventually broke free of his brainwashing and became a hero again, the animated series hasn't confirmed whether that redemption has happened here. Well, that brings us to the very end of this video. As you know, X-Men 97 has been deviating a lot from the OG comic book story arcs to chart out its own narrative path, so maybe some of these predictions should be taken with a grain of salt. But I really am excited to see how everyone, starting from the X-Force to the X-Factor, and of course our OG X-Men, all come together to bring Apocalypse down. Having said that, what are your theories about the remaining 4 episodes of X-Men 97 Season 2? Let us know in the comment box below.